were completely blocked out. Nothing seemed to be touching it. I got to see an ear, nose and throat specialist. He had a look and said, do this, do that. If it's not right in such and such time, we'll do some surgery. I went overseas at the time, and by the time they came back, my chest was involved, and so I was then concentrating on supposedly bronchitis, and then I was getting another bunch of antibiotics, and eventually, and I was just going downhill. I was coughing all night, buckets and buckets of mucus, couldn't breathe through my sinuses. And eventually I saw a doctor. I said, look, we're going to have to look into this. I've woken up one night and just couldn't breathe. And he was alarmed by that, and so referred me to a specialist in Brisbane who said I had severe asthma. Now, we do have asthma in the family, but I'd never been diagnosed with anything like it before. So that diagnosis period was about 2008. And since then I've been struggling one way and another to try to do what I can, and also to find the health and medical practitioners to provide whatever guidance and intervention to try to restore some health. So that's kind, so I was at a very low ebb. I had to retire from my work 4 years ago. I just realised that, it was going to be the end of me if I didn't try to get on top of my health, and I really couldn't do that, continuing to do what I was doing.
Yeah. It's remarkable what stress will do. Stress is such a...
Yeah.
And was it ongoing?
It's insidious.
Stress? Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. I mean, I was running a school, an independent school, but it started off I was asked to first of all investigate, report on, and then carry out the amalgamation of two separate schools, which had different ownerships, different histories, different staffing structures, and so on, a whole range of complexities there. And, as you find in those sorts of situations, there are a number of individuals who will actively obstruct and make life difficult for everybody. And for a range of reasons, systemically, I found myself, with probably one exception in terms of the governance of the school, trying to sort it out myself. And so, eventually, it wasn't around about 2001, we did get the two schools amalgamated, and I was about 6 months later appointed to be the first head of college, and of course then all the change work was then left with me to lead. So
not much stress at all. Anything to do with schools? It's not much stress. No.
Yeah, no, not much. Yeah, even under normal circumstances, let alone structural change. Yeah.
My mum has been in the education industry for my entire life. She's a mathematics education lecturer at university. So I understand from, what that's like, and lots of involvement with family and friends who are teachers. So, and in management and all that, it's very high stress at the best of times.
Yeah, that's right. Well, you're invested. Ultimately, the bottom line is children's lives, and you can't let anything get in the way of what's right for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, just having a look back. So, if we go back, say, 16 years, 17 years. So that's right when this amalgamation process was beginning, isn't it?
Yeah, that's about right, yes.
Because what happens is when we do these consultations, we talk through when symptoms began, when sickness began, and that sort of thing. And we can fairly accurately predict that within weeks or months or a year or so too, before someone has their first big incident. So in your case, the day when you woke up with the flu-like symptoms, which was the glandular fever, in the lead up to that, there's generally been some significant stress, whether it's a chronic stress or whether it's a sudden, a car accident or a whatever, some incident.
No, that's definitely true. It was within 12 months.
Okay. Yeah. So what happens is when we have sustained stress is obviously that changes our minerals. And again, you've been reading along and learning a little bit within the MAG group. So I'm sure parts of what I'm going to say you've started to understand. But when we have sustained stress, that leads to the body. So to begin with, let's say we have optimum minerals available. So let's say that your mum had the optimum amount during pregnancy, which I'm sad to say doesn't generally happen, and especially for Australian families because our soils are so poor. We've generally got a couple of generations before us that have not been ideal. But let's just say your mum had great minerals available when she was pregnant with you. And then you had a perfect stress-free childhood, with normal stuff, but stress-free. By the time we hit school, university, or any studies that we do, life as an adult, the stress starts to hit us and we start to deplete. So let's say we started that time with 100% of the available minerals. Every single time that we have a stressful situation, the body goes, all right, first thing is let's go to plan A. Let's bypass this. Let's use a bit of this. We'll take from this. But we'll keep a balance, and it keeps homeostasis happening. But then by the time we have many years worth of doing that, we're past plan Z. We're going to, the next round, and it gets to a point where the body has sort of stolen from Peter to pay Paul, and we reach a crisis point, and then an infection will kick in or whatever. Along the way, this is because the iron that's in our food, in our environment, that sort of thing, it starts to play behind the scenes. And again, with time, we lose that buffering capacity. So it makes total sense to me that after a couple of really stressful years, and I'm sure even when you were asked to take the amalgamation process on, before that it wouldn't have been stress-free either if you were in the education system.
No, I was working in special needs. So I was running a department, and of course that had its own demands as well. But I wouldn't have said that I was particularly stressed in that position. But of course aware of the demands and expectations of the role, and of course the expectations I have of myself as well.
Yeah. And which is most teachers as well, especially if you're working with special needs. You go, okay, so I have to be there for this. I have to be there for this amount of time. I have to do these reports. You know that you've got certain expectations you've got to meet. And most teachers are not gentle on themselves, not through any that I know of anyway.
Yeah,
it's not an industry where you can be, because there are so many expectations, and that's gotten worse with time, I'm pretty sure, based on what I've learned. But again, I'm thankfully not a teacher of school kids. I tolerate my own children, but that's about it.
Sure. I get that.
Terrible. I don't.
No. I fully get that. I do understand.
I do better teaching older people, let's just say. So then what we see when we flip that over to results, one of the coping mechanisms is we see a change in the calcium and magnesium metabolism within the body. And so when we see your results on your screen, you should be able to see over here, this little graph here. We've got this first column is calcium and the second column is magnesium. So just pause that for a moment. When we get these raw results, which you've printed out from the laboratory, they give us the reference range here, tells us the average of all the results that they see. So it's not necessarily what biological norm is or anything like that. It's literally just, okay, so we take a sample of sick people and let's average their results and let's change the average over time. So what we do is we use some formulas to normalize that to what we actually would anticipate seeing in a biological norm type scenario. And that's what this graph is about. So when we see someone that has calcium over 500, which was your raw result, and that translates to, and the same with magnesium, it was higher as well. This tells us that you've been under sustained stress for a long time. Before we even knew any of that history, we could have picked that about you. And so it seems like you're high in calcium and high in magnesium. That's not exactly the case. What this is part of that coping mechanism. It actually pumps out calcium instead of it being in your bones or in the places where you want it, and the magnesium, the same, instead of it being in your red blood cells, it's coping with the stress, doing other things to do that. So we can see here that your calcium and magnesium, this is half of the actual amount in the conversion. So it's way up here, whereas we want it around about, gravitating around the 1. So again, this shows to us that you've been under stress. So exactly everything that you've described to us doesn't surprise us. And it should give you some level of validity. Over these years, you've been going to the specialists and going, well, there's something going on that's causing this. There's something, you know, the stress was at least a part of that. And each of us express stress in different ways. So we'll all do that. You know, some people will have a result like this. Some will show other results. But one of the...
Kristen, could I just ask there? I've been effectively retired from that work for nearly 4 years now. I've been I've just had to lead a very quiet life. I find it that it strains me to have, you know, really what I would have called normal social activities and social interactions. And so I find myself being very protective of myself, knowing that I will slip into fatigue if I take on anything too much. So I'm just wondering why, you know, why am I not restoring after nearly 4 years and taking things very quietly, very easy? That source of stress is gone. My body just doesn't seem to be responding to the repair opportunity.
And so it's very interesting, the words that you use there, the fact that you're protecting yourself. That's literally what this pattern is. It's a self-protect mode. So you're responding to what your body has been in a self-protect mode for a while, and now that you've been able to retire, you're listening to that. What we can do with the root cause protocol is actually help you to break what this is called a calcium shell. What we can see here with the high
calcium shelf?
Shell, as in
shell.
Shell. Calcium shell.
Okay. Calcium shell. Okay.
And so
I haven't heard of that.
What we want to do is to slowly support the body to reduce that calcium shell, and then you won't feel the need to self-protect, and you will see the healing happen. But we need to support your body along that way. And there's a couple of different angles by which we will actually encourage you to do that. One of the big things is to do a thing called EFT, or tapping. It's an emotional, so while you don't have the active stress in your life anymore, the EFT actually helps to release. It's almost like your body internally is still sitting in fight or flight mode, waiting to amalgamate another school or whatever.
I get that.
So when we support it through EFT to go, actually, you know what, this doesn't serve me anymore, I'm not living in that life anymore, you'll actually find that then the root cause protocol will be more effective. And again, some of these other things that we're going to encourage you to look at will work better. And you'll feel much more yourself and actually wanting to socially interact and all of that. It's literally your body is in self-protect mode against more damage, even though you consciously know that you're not in damage mode now.
Yeah. Okay, I'm with you. I've got that.
So it's really quite interesting when we see you use the words that literally in a minute I'll take you to a ratios page, and it says things like overprotective, self-protect mode, shell, and that's literally what the body does.
Oh, okay. I haven't heard the term calcium shell before, but have been very conscious that probably not for the first year or two once I resigned, because I was just literally feeling so well. I spent a lot of time in bed, really just completely exhausted. I would even fall asleep just in the middle of the day wherever I was sitting. But in the last couple of years, I've become aware that I have got somewhere I've got more resources, but I know that I need to protect myself, because if I exceed those resources too much, I'll be back in bed for 3 days. And I mean, that's just not a life, you can't, it really destroys me when I find that that's happened again.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, and how much I can understand that side of things. When I started this process, and I had a little she was a bit over 1 actually when I got the testing done, and I had been a runner before her, and even
right,
when she was a baby, and I went back to running, and Teresa and Morley are going, Christine, you need to stop. And I'm going, but this is my mental time, this is my fitness, and they're both like, yeah, but you suffer days later when you have a migraine or you physically can't pull the energy together or whatever. And
well, that's exactly me, because, and I did have one GP who some years ago looked at me. I was having a conversation with him. I think he was doing some mineral stuff with me, and he looked at me and he said, Anne, do you think because I was a runner and then I would walk for exercise. He said, Anne, do you think you're going to exercise your way out of this? And he gave me such an intense look. I thought, oh, actually, I do think that. And what's really wrong with that? Isn't that so? And so I've really had to confront that. And I've certainly, in the last 10 years, I've become aware that I have, what do you call it, exercise intolerance. The smallest amount, like minutes exceeding my capacity, and I'm literally wiped out, back in bed 3 days, and pretty useless for 5 days, really.
Yeah.
And so I find it very difficult for physical activity to play any part in whatever healing I might achieve.
Yep. And where you are right now, you don't want to be doing much physical activity. Something like yoga or walking in a pool or something, fine. But yeah, you wouldn't want to be doing it. There's some healing that you can do first, and then you may get joy again from that without crashes.
Yes, yeah.
And that's the thing. Like now, I'm a couple of years after I finally listened to them, and I can go and do a horse ride, or I can go and do a walk and do a faster walk, and I don't crash days afterwards. So it does come back, but you've got to be kind to yourself. And you know what? You've been listening to your body for the last few years, and that's actually really, really good. And that's probably saved you from declining even more, to be honest, even though it's frustrating to have been stuck in that way. You've now got the root cause protocol to step into it gradually to help you get back to where you have been.
And I have been using, to the extent that I'm able, the root cause protocol. It's been very on-off, and I'm sure you'll be able to really give me some pretty clear guidelines on that now. But just as I've seen a lot of people particularly on the social media groups, a lot of people have responded just by implementing the protocol as per the advice and the files there. But it seems to be more complicated than that for me, and I just haven't. I've made some headway, I have to say. I really do feel I've made some headway, enough for me to realise that there's more in this for me that I need to resolve, become aware of and work on. But I certainly, the straightforward advice as they are, I just find myself in a more complicated situation.
Yeah. And the beauty of these consults is, by us seeing these results, we can give you some suggestions which should be fairly straightforward for you to implement. We'll listen more in a little while on what you've had success with and what we need to adjust.
Sure.
But some of the subtleties of what isn't in those files based on your results, that will probably help you to respond better in the long run anyway. So
Okay.
I will cover that shortly.
Sure.
So what you can see here on the right-hand side, this black graph or with the black border, this is a version of the one that we were just looking at with some adjustments to it to help highlight a few things for you. So I have adjusted the scale on this a little bit more with the calcium and magnesium. So it's actually 1/8 of the actual, not the half anymore. And that's just because it gives us more scale and more clarity, I suppose, on some of these other results. So we're going to look at a few ratios and a few levels and things. Every single thing on this indicates to us that you've got iron behaving badly behind the scenes, and that it's at the underpinning level of why you have responded the way you have with the stress. And that the root cause protocol, again, will help with time to mobilize energy and that sort of thing.
So you will be able to explain, I'm sure you will,
Yep.
the blood is showing a result of 2.1 for iron,
Yep.
which is low, but the report says normal iron status. Low in terms of the reference interval there.
Yeah.
But the report there says normal iron status, but on the hair mineral, it's showing that it's getting up into a high range.
Yeah. And this is to do with bioavailability and a few other things. So yes, absolutely. We'll be able to go through that. A couple other things worth noting as we begin this part too is that you've got what we call a slow oxidation type. And so when it comes to the oxidation type, you can be slow or fast. It's not one is better than the other. Faster is not necessarily better. It's just different. Slow oxidizers metabolize minerals in a certain pattern, and fast oxidizers metabolize them in a certain pattern. So yours happens to be slow, along with around about 80% of the population. It's kind of like left-handed and right-handed, you know. You either are one or the other. Some people can teeter between the two and be a bit ambidextrous, but generally we see slow or fast. Slow oxidizers tend to make a fair amount of energy, but they also lose a fair amount of energy. So down the bottom here we see there's a calculation based on your results of about 94% energy loss. So, you know, when you said the fatigue is a big thing for you.
Yeah.
And so you make that energy, but you lose it too. And that's part of how you feel so tired as well.
Right.
It's hard for you to mobilize that energy into the cells where you need it and to keep it there.
Right.
So when we look at, firstly, the calcium and magnesium.
Can I just mention something there, Kirsten, just for your information?
Yep.
I've seen a GP, a fellow called Greg Emerson in Brisbane.
Yep.
You would know Greg, yeah. And he's discussed with me ways to, and supplements that would help with restoring energy. And he felt the ATP mechanism was relevant for me. And he has provided a number of supplements at one at a time, but each time it's turned out that it appears that something, probably arginine, is in both, and I've broken out in cold sores, herpes, both times. And at the moment, I haven't touched that stuff. I've just gone right away from them. I just haven't, of all that he recommended for me, all of them have had the same effect. I've got the energy, fabulous. I start to feel and recognise a little bit of myself, but I've ended up activating that herpes virus in my body, and it's broken out a couple of times in the sides of my mouth. And at the moment, and I don't know what's causing it again, but I've got another one on my lip. So, and I'm fairly studiously avoid arginine, heavy foods, and try to focus on lysine side of things. But anyway, I just thought I'd mention that in terms of energy production. It seems to be a complicated set of issues for me to deal with to get it lifted.
Yep. Now, I do know Greg, and it's interesting that he calls this the ATP mechanism, like the way he's angled it with you, because what we see when people have a low bioavailability of copper, that we need that to make ATP. So within our mitochondria,
Right.
in our cells,
Mm.
we need bioavailable copper and we need magnesium in order to make energy. Otherwise, there are backup ways that we can do it, but we don't make very much that way, and it takes a lot more effort by the body to do it.
Right.
So,
And am I low on bioavailable copper?
absolutely.
Oh, right.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well and
Yep.
truly.
What would you do? Third choice, yes.
And
Right.
the interesting thing is asthma is a clinical magnesium deficiency. So that's the other angle of that. So
But my magnesium on the hair HTMA seems to be very high.
that's
Because
a
I do
loss.
take,
It's
sorry?
a loss.
It's a
It's a
loss of
loss.
magnesium. That
Oh,
we're
it means I'm
It's a
losing
loss.
magnesium.
Yeah, you're not holding
Yeah.
onto it in the cells where you
Oh,
need it. The
right.
body is
You're
excreting it.
hosing it up. You're
Oh, I
hosing it
see.
out.
Right. Oh, okay. So that's why I feel like I've never
Mm,
got enough magnesium.
Yes,
no.
absolutely.
And also because you're on, I think you're on the oral penicillin, that hoses magnesium out as well. So you have high calcium. So magnesium often will move up to correct the ratio of calcium when you've got a high calcium like that. But then
Right.
as well as that, you are taking drugs that will hose magnesium out of your cells as well. That's why it's really
Yes.
high.
And that will be the asthma medications.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's why you have asthma. Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
a
okay.
catch-22.
Deficiency.
It's catch-22, yeah, yeah.
The beauty is,
Well, the doctors, the specialists are very puzzled why when I was 55, suddenly this raging asthma developed apparently out of nowhere.
Yep.
They found it very unusual.
Yeah, and that's because of your minerals. Yeah.
Okay.
It's your metabolic imbalance. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And so again, all that we're seeing here, both in the graph that we've got marked up in front of us and what you've just been talking to us, the beauty of it is you're nowhere near the ideals. That's okay. You're not broken. The root cause protocol is designed to support you back to a more ideal life where you keep your magnesium where you need it, and that you don't need the medications for the sinus infections, for the asthma and all of that, so that you don't have this chasing your tail with one or the other to keep you able to breathe and all the rest of it. So
wow, that sounds very promising.
it'll take time.
Yeah, I
Don't
appreciate
get us
that.
wrong. You know, this has been coming for a while, so it's going to take a
Yeah.
while to go backwards the other direction. But I think you should get some relief, again, step by step. And like you've already recognised, you've made some headways, but there's going to be some adjustments along the way. And what I love hearing is that you've been trying different things, but you're very aware and you take note of, as you do things, okay, so this is something I need to be aware of. And that part of what we actually are teaching you within this root cause protocol is to listen to your body and to have that intuition on how your body responds to different things. So that is what we are going to be encouraging you to go, okay, so this hasn't worked, let's try XYZ. And one at a time, mind you, so that you know how you respond. And then with time, you may need to retry other things or whatever, but you'll get to a point where you'll go, oh, I actually feel like I need some extra potassium right now, or I need some extra magnesium right now. And you'll actually be able to juggle those things. So before the asthma kicks in and gets bad, you'll be able to pick other things up before that. And it does take time to get that awareness and to make it more honed in. But I think that you'll find that will change your outcomes so much, especially when it comes to winter, when the air changes, when the seasons change, which I'm sure gives a peak for things for you.
Seasonal is crucial for me. Yeah, I often go into a decline.
Yep.
Two of the times in the year, particularly March, April, and then again September, October, are typical decline times for me. And it's not uncommon for me to find everything so unstable. I've got a recourse to oral prednisone, which I hate. It's just I feel so horrible on that stuff, but it's life-saving. So what can I do, you know?
Yeah, yeah. And that's the thing. Our goal is to help you not need that. Again, as a general reassurance, I suppose, and everyone's different, but my kids were on asthma management plans. They were on, I can't even think of the name of it now, one of the preventative puffers plus Ventolin whenever as they needed. They had to carry it around everywhere. And that had been since my daughter had chronic pneumonia from the first time she got it. She was 10 months old, and then again just before she turned 3. And then she was one half of a set of twins. As the twins got older, she seemed to reduce but still needed some medications, whereas her twin brother got worse. Anyway, by the time they were in school and in grade 1, they were well and truly both needing it still, especially my son. And you know what?
Poor little souls.
They have not needed anything, though, since we started on this. They've needed maybe asthma puffers once or twice in the middle of winter during really cold times when a bit comes in with the cold air.
Yeah.
But other than that, they have had maybe 1 day off each per year for the last 3 years of school for the whole year.
That's fantastic.
They don't need it. So, again, kids respond in a quicker way. We all get that because their bodies are designed to do that. But the changes that we've seen as a family, that I've seen in others, you've absolutely got a means and a way. It's just, let's find the way for you. That's what we're here to do.
So Kristen, I'm sure we'll come to the practical guidance.
Yes.
So do you recommend that after a period of time of implementing things, that there is usually good reason to go back and repeat some of these tests, or do you just basically rely on the fact that a person is, particularly if they're picking up and feeling better, that's enough? I'm just wondering down the track, what your typical sort of recommendations for keeping track on what, whether the data itself is showing improvement?
Yep. So about once a year for the hair analysis. And then if you want to redo the blood tests, anywhere from 3 to 6 monthly is sufficient. And you don't have to do it then. It's more, okay, after 3 months you're feeling good, but you're ready for the next steps and you're not really sure what to do. Well, we can do a bit of a touch base, have a look at how the bloods have progressed and adjust in. Or you might go to 5 months and go, you know what, I'm feeling really good. How can I make me feel even better, or whatever. And you may not need to do full bloods. You just might need a touch base to review where you're at, how you're feeling and how you're responding to. So it's a bit individual like that, where it's not a set hard and fast type thing. I know Teresa and I sometimes went 12 months before we would go back and have another consult with Morley, because we were doing all right in between. We would just adjust ourselves. And the more intuitive you get with how you are, the less often you'll actually need to touch base.
Yeah, sure. That's fair enough. I can see that.
So, Now, with the results that we see here, like I said, this is 1/8 of the actual result for your calcium and magnesium, but ideal is 1.2, and your raw results for both for the ratios, I should say, or for the individual things, calcium was about 12 and magnesium was about 6. So that's a fair bit above 1.2. But that's, again, what we were talking to you about with the calcium shell side of things. That's what we see in a calcium shell. That's not unheard of or anything else. That's just the way that your body has responded to that situation. So in an ideal world, we would have them even, sitting at 1.2. And again, that will come with time. It won't happen overnight by any means, but that's the optimum that we shoot for. So the optimum ratio between the two is 7. So 7 calcium for 1 magnesium, and yours is sitting at 14.5. So that we will talk a little bit more about the ratios, but again, here and now, this graph is really to show you that this is a sign of metabolic stress in your body. The same goes for your sodium and potassium, and this is known as a vitality index when we look at the ratios. So you know how you just don't have that energy, and like you described, it's that you're running on empty. That's not surprising to us that it's not at the 0.8, which is around about the optimum that we look for. Again, they're not too far off even, which is great. So the ratio, if they were even, would be 2.4, and you're sitting at 3.3. So they're not a big gap between them, but together they're a bit lower than we would like. But again, this shows us that your body is under stress. Now, with the next little section, we look at the metals. So this green bar is where ideally we would like all of the metals to line up. So that's copper, zinc, iron, and manganese. And you can see that the copper is quite high. I would believe that's a loss as well, like we described with the calcium and the magnesium. It's there's not much bioavailable copper in the blood, and we'll see that when we go across to the blood. When you were or have been working with Greg, was there much zinc prescribed within what he did? Do you know?
He did prescribe zinc. Oh, I've just lost your screen. Hello, are you there?
Yes, still here.
Oh,
I can see you.
Yeah, something happened to the screen. Yes, he did find my zinc was low, and with the taste and smell issue, that's what he picked up straight away. I did ask him about the relevance of any other minerals, and he didn't seem to be too interested in pursuing those, which is what's caused me to find Morley and the media there. So he did prescribe zinc, fairly high zinc, which I took for a while, but it certainly didn't restore the taste and smell. That's kind of where we are with that. And I haven't taken that. Probably that was before I had the last sinus surgery. And so that was March of this year.
Okay.
And I know I've since learned that, according to Morley's protocol, that taking zinc supplements are not recommended.
Yeah. Yep. And again, that's a learned thing along the way. Would you happen to know how much the zinc dose was that he prescribed for you? And was it 50 milligrams per day or 100 per day? And was it a couple of months that you took it for?
I probably took it probably didn't take it for 2 months, maybe, but maybe 6 weeks, something like that. I'm just looking for it here. It's Biomedica, and it's got elemental zinc, 25 mgs, zinc glycinate, 40.9 milligrams, zinc citrate dihydrate, 38.94. Then it's got some B6, B5, and a bit of magnesium citrate. And it doesn't give me a sort of a total zinc though.
No, that's right. And were you on just one of those each day?
I think he had me on 2. I'm not sure.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it was 2.
That's about 100 per tablet or per capsule. That would have been around about 105 milligrams of zinc per capsule.
Right. That's a lot?
That's a fairly high amount, yeah.
Oh, wow. Yes. So, yeah, that explains why your blood showed what it did.
We'll be able to... We actually could see that in your blood results. And before we got on talking to you, we wondered if you had taken zinc because of some of what we could see in there. So we'll explain that a bit more. But while we were there, I thought I'd just clarify that because it does impact on some of the next section. Yeah,
I'm just going to step away from my phone because I got it. It was getting a bit flat. I'm just going to go 2 steps to pick up my paperwork.
Oh, please do. Yep.
Okay, I'm back. Sorry. Going to stay on a charge.
I know that feeling. My phone, sometimes it's really good. And like last night I was using it and it got down to 4%. I put it on the charger and within 30 seconds it was up to 6%. I'm going, I think you're telling me lies, phone.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Because I had it on a full charge before it was on 100% before we started, but just in case I don't want to run out in the middle of things.
That's all good. Okay, so when we look at these metals in the middle, we see what we call a bit of a ski slope. You see, we start high and then we ski on down via the zinc. We go up and then down again. And this is known, again, within our training, within the root cause protocol, that we've got this, especially when we see the gap between the iron and the copper, that's flagging to us that there's a big bioavailability discrepancy between the two.
Right. Right.
So while it seems counterintuitive that the copper, like with the mag, and the calcium is high, I'm pretty confident that this is indicating a loss and that the bioavailability of your copper is really low, because the sinuses, the infection, the all of that side of things, and the energy is flagging to us big time that you've got low bioavailable copper. And then the asthma, and as well as the tiredness, is indicating the low magnesium. And again, those two things together equate to very little energy production in the ATP and the mitochondria. So what Greg has said absolutely makes sense, the ATP mechanism, but I think he's just forgotten a few other little important bits that are somewhat relevant, and so that's what we're going to work with you on.
Okay, great.
So one other thing we see with the numbers here, and we will quickly dash across in a minute to see some other results, but we have a conundrum tab, we call it, and it's to do with copper and iron metabolism, again, based on the hair analysis. So we see for you that you've got 11 out of 12 flags for copper dysregulation, and 4 out of 5 for iron and copper dysregulation.
Right.
So again, all of these things to us flag that your body has been under a lot of stress for a long time, and that it's gone through its options on how to keep you going, and it has gotten to a point where it's struggling for a reason, because there's things happening behind the scenes. So again, to me it validates why you've got the tiredness, why you've got the other things. I hope that it helps you to see that you're not imagining a lot of that, and that you've been in answer of questions for a long time on what's going on. Well, this is starting to peel back some of those questions for you.
Yeah,
well, I hope
excellent.
So anyway.
Thank you. I appreciate those comments.
So with boron, this is our last one on here. We commonly see this in Australia and around the world, but especially here, because we have really low boron in our soils, so our food doesn't naturally have as much as we would like.
I've found boron to be excellent for me.
Excellent. That's good to hear.
Yeah. No, it's been. It's been a valuable addition for me.
Very good. Just writing that down. So boron helps the magnesium to go into the cell. So that makes absolute sense to us why that would be helping you, because that's going to get the mag where you need it, which is going to help your lungs to work better. It's going to help your body to make energy more effectively, all of that sort of thing. It's also going to help with the infection side of things and the natural infecting or fighting off things like the cold sores, keeping the cold sore. Too much food in the brain. Completely unrelated topics. And it's only Monday. I'm doomed. But it's really what we do is strengthen the host here, so that things like viruses and bacterial infections and that sort of thing, they just won't happen as frequently, because the body can fight it off naturally.
My immune system has been chaotic. But it's very puzzling to me. But the allergist, the immunologist, and the respiratory physician have all been interested in my immunology, and which I've said is disordered and problematic. But the interesting thing is, Kristen, is that since the asthma and all of that sort of landed on me, I don't think I've had a single instance of a typical cold virus. All sorts of other serious health issues, but I haven't had what I would call a flu or a cold. Now, that's very unusual for me as a child and adult growing up. That's not typical. So I don't understand that, but Yeah, it's weird.
So as a child and adult, you got the flu and colds easily?
I had my tonsils and adenoids removed when I was 12, obviously for repeated infections. Yeah, and I probably had, as an adult, I probably had normal amounts of colds and flu, not more than anybody else, but I certainly didn't have any particular strength in relation to those things. But since this, it only occurred to me about 5 years ago. I thought, that is so weird. I've got this immune issue, but I'm not getting those sorts of routine infections.
It actually doesn't entirely surprise me. So what we see when you've got iron overload in the tissues, when you get the iron in the blood and in places where it's floating around, basically, the body flags that and goes, okay, if this is high, this is a high inflammation state, I'm going to store it away in the tissue. I'm going to keep it away out of harm's way, so to speak. And the body gets very efficient at doing that. And so it will actually, I guess, if it slips on that, that's when you get sick. So when you're worn out, that sort of thing, that's, when people would normally get a cold or a flu and that sort of thing. So,
yeah, but what happens to me at those times is my asthma becomes unstable.
Exactly.
The sinuses and congestion and all of that muck absolutely go ballistic.
Yep.
So it looks like I'm sick in the normal sense, but actually it's not the normal sense.
Yeah, yeah. And that's, we do see that combination of, and sometimes I've seen this, I'm trying to think what particular, it was a chronic illness. There was a few different people who I spoke to who had major, whether it was cancer that wasn't yet being treated or other things, but, significant autoimmune type things. They never would get colds. They would never get flus or anything like that. And it's because the body actually becomes so efficient at locking the iron out of the blood that they actually are less inclined to get the systemic, the general ones that float around the blood and make you get, a general cold or flu. But they are more prone to other things. And particularly for you with the sinuses and that sort of thing, the bioavailable copper in those areas is so low, and the mag and the asthma side of it, the mag dropping will trigger the asthma. And so the body goes into a bit of a recovery mode to try and prevent you getting sick again. So it's, as soon as that kicks in, it's probably locking away even more iron at that particular point in time to go, righto, everyone, let's keep this under wraps. But what happens is also, if you need antibiotics, and I'm sure the steroids and the different things, that the way that they work in the body is to mobilize copper out of your liver, shake your liver up a little bit and go, come on, give us some copper. And the copper actually is your fighting infection, and whether it's from bacteria, yeasts, viruses, that sort of thing. That's where it comes from, is the bioavailable copper. And so the antibiotics start to activate those things out of the liver. If you've got excess iron there, it will actually slot in and take up those spots in the liver and elsewhere in the body it may have shaken it up from. And that's why you'll often see people, whether this applies to you or not, but who have one round of antibiotics, then they need a second round because they need to shake a bit more of the copper out. But then it seems as though they get something else again that little bit easier for the same thing, because the body can't actually mobilize the copper because it hasn't gone back in where it needed to go.
Right.
Again, this sustained stress changes the way that the body stores these components after the fact, and the copper just can't slot back in when the iron and everything has been disrupted, and it can't just go again, doesn't slot back the way it was.
So you won't be surprised, and you mentioned autoimmune condition, that I had a diagnosis in the first instance when I first got that flu, glandular fever and so on, of Hashimoto's.
No, doesn't surprise me at all.
And the doctor I was seeing at the end, which, he was doing his best to sort of take a more holistic approach, he sort of was trying to focus on that, but then was sort of paying attention to thyroid function as well. I don't take any thyroid medications. He did put me on something to start with, but at the time I didn't find that it didn't seem to be worth. I wasn't getting any result from it, and at that stage I was just concerned about anything that I was taking into my body, into a body that was just clearly struggling with everything.
Yep. Well, I think that was a good choice, to be honest. But yeah, that doesn't surprise me whatsoever. And as I'm saying these things, are you sitting there going, "How does she know this?"
Yeah. Well, I'm gathering you're picking it up through examination and analysis of the hair and blood results.
Absolutely. Yeah. So if I now flick over to the key ratio results.
Should I be seeing something on my screen?
Yeah, it may take a little bit to show up. Are you
okay.
seeing picture of me or Teresa or of the screen, but it's just the same?
I'm just seeing the two original graphs.
It should flick over. It might take a little bit. Sometimes there's a bit of a delay.
Rightio.
I'm surprised that it hasn't switched yet, because normally there's not quite that much.
Mine just switched.
Oh no, I'm not getting anything.
No,
I've just got the original two graphs.
Okay. Well, hopefully it'll switch over. I'll describe it anyway, and we can try flicking back between it if it doesn't. So you'll be able to look at this on your results anyway that's in your computer later on, or on your phone.
Okay.
So what we see here is there's a number of ratios. This is what we were talking about earlier as well, with regards to, so between, the first one is calcium and phosphorus. So anything above 8 is seen as extreme high and an anabolic process. So that can flag for us that whether you're getting enough protein, whether it's a good protein source, how well you're digesting your proteins.
Well, it would be if so. Am I very high there?
Absolutely. So anything above 8 is extremely high, and you are sitting at 50.
Oh, right. Because I seem to have a great need for protein. I'm very conscious of the quality of protein that I eat. I find I need some protein every day, every meal, 3 times a day. I focus on grass-fed meat. I eat grass-fed organic eggs almost every day. And I also try to get in, well, it's often 3 or 4 meals, but at least 2 meals of seafood, good quality seafood each week.
Beautiful. That's.
But it does strike me that I seem to have an exorbitant need for protein.
Yep. So something that you can add to, and we'll talk about specifics on this in a little while, but add to what you're doing on this is digestive enzymes to support you breaking that down. Because you potentially crave that much because your body doesn't effectively break it down. So it's harder for it to get the nutrients that it needs out of those things.
Right.
So, again, we'll get to specifics on that later, but digestive help, absolutely. And the exciting thing with this is, as you get more nutrition from your food, as far as breaking it down better, helping with the enzymes, but also just the protocol in general, you will make more stomach acid by yourself and enough enzyme from that, so that you'll absorb more minerals, and that you'll feel better, and that you'll probably need less protein. And like, it goes in a really interesting cycle. As you start to more effectively be able to do these things, then you'll notice big changes.
Oh, that'll be great. Kristen, I should just mention at 12:15 I have another teleconference.
Okay.
So just so you've got an understanding of I don't want to rush you at all. I'm happy to work right up until then, but yeah, I'm sorry, I will need to go to that other telephone call.
That's absolutely point. Okay. So the next one we've got here is the calcium to magnesium ratio. And so that's one that we had been talking about already. That's quite high. and again is not a surprise to us at all, given the high calcium and everything. So on this one, this is where I thought you would find it interesting. It describes high calcium, protected, defended, lowered cell permeability, so things don't go into the cell, and it's what we call a calcium shell. So something worth knowing that Teresa and I found in the research before we started this consult is that calcium moving in and out of a cell is linked to smell and taste. So if the calcium isn't going where we need it, so in your case it's being excreted out, it's not in your bones, it's possibly not in the cells either, or not staying in and out, moving the way it should be, then you'll lose your sense of taste and smell. So for whatever reason, when you have those medications, that helps it to go where it should be. And again, with the protocol and what we're going to help you with in the next couple of sections, I'm confident that that will, with time, again, who knows how long exactly it'll take, but I think it will move things in where it should be and other things out where they shouldn't be, and regulate everything a lot better.
Right. Well, that is very interesting, isn't it?
So the sodium to potassium, we talked about, this is the vitality ratio that I mentioned.
Yes.
So you're sitting at 3.3 or thereabouts. Ideal is 2.4. So you're actually in a good range here. And this possibly, the fact that these are closer wouldn't surprise me, because you have been in the lower stress environment for the last few years. When you were in the peak of your stress, I wouldn't be surprised if these were quite different. But right now, you're not living in a stressful scenario other than dealing with the asthma and, you know, the health stuff that you contend with.
I am very conscious about getting sufficient good quality salt.
Yep.
With my meals. And I've probably been working on that for about 4 years, I suppose 3 or 4 years. So the fact that I'm a bit high, that's not really higher than the 2.4, that's not really problematic.
It's within the good range, and it's not very far away from 2.4. So it'll ebb and flow around. That's normal.
Okay, great.
So the adrenal ratio is 0.29. And anything under 1 is flagged as extreme adrenal fatigue and suppression. So we see, the low ratios, decreased adrenal effect at the cellular level. Again, we know that your cells, the movement of things in and out is not fluid at this stage. And chronic stress and exhaustion reaction. Again, so your body is living in a chronic stress state. Whether you are...
my adrenal ratio is 2.9.
Is 0.29.
Oh, 0.29.
Yep.
Oh, okay. So I'm definitely under.
Yes.
Yeah. Because I would have guessed that. I would have said absolutely I'd be under. I'm constantly looking for adrenal solutions.
Yep. So ideal is 4 there, and you're 0.29.
Okay.
So
ideal is 4.
Yes.
Did you say? Oh my gosh. Okay.
Again, this is just flagging to us that you've been under sustained stress. So it's nothing too dramatic, but you'll benefit from doing the protocol, and
it points to the directions and the needs.
The next one is the thyroid ratio, and again, because your calcium is so high, this indicates a calcium shell again. So we knew that from looking at your raw results before looking at any of this. So when you've got high calcium, we talked before about that it's protection, defensive, low cell permeability, all that sort of thing. So yours is sitting at 167, and anything above 50 indicates that it's working hard. So
above 50.
Yes.
So and mine is
167.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But the ideal ratio is 4.2.
Ideal.
Yep. Ideal 4.2.
But people can fluctuate. It can be up a little bit and down a little bit.
Yeah.
because
Right.
they do fluctuate.
Yeah.
That's normally true.
Okay. Well, thank you, Teresa.
So again, that's flagged. The calcium to potassium ratio is flagged as being for the thyroid. And again, you flagged to us before with Hashimoto's. This doesn't say that your Hashimoto's is active or anything else. It's more reflecting the calcium level being that point. Probably 15 years ago, when your doctor got those results, your calcium would have been at this level then or higher. Who knows exactly where it was, but there would have been something going on at that time too.
Yeah, I think I would still have those results, so I'll have a look at them sometime. I know at the time he was very concerned. My cortisol was just off the scales.
Yeah.
They couldn't even get a reading on it really because it was so far out of the ranges.
Yep. Yep. And so the last ratio that we look at is our zinc to copper ratio. And so zinc, again, we notice that the copper seemed to be quite high. And so that will change this ratio. It flags it as an extreme low. Anything under 3 is considered low, and yours is 2.44.
That's the zinc.
Yeah, zinc to copper ratio.
Oh, okay, 2.44. Yeah, so it's getting closer, but
yeah.
Did you say 3 is ideal or 3 is normal?
Under 3 is extreme low. Ideal is 8. 8 is where you.
Oh, okay. So I'm way off. Okay.
So again, a range rather, somewhere 6.5 to 10 is the good range.
Yeah.
It does vary.
Yeah.
But
okay. Yeah. So it's under 3 is
Yep.
All right. Yep.
When and again, your screen may not catch up to this, unfortunately, but maybe it'll.
No, it hasn't. It hasn't moved.
Is we want the conundrum tab, and you'll be able to flick through these on your results when you see them.
Okay.
Teresa, I think you're drawing. Are you drawing on my screen, or am I drawing on my screen?
I was just tapping my screen to see if I could move something, but maybe it's come. I've got a bar down here for pen, highlighter, and so on.
Maybe see if you can touch on that again. See if it turns it off, because that might be from you. I've played with that before on mine, and it might catch the screen up.
I'm trying to turn it off, but it's nothing. I can't move the screen at all. Nothing.
Oh, that's all right.
I've got no interactivity.
So when you come to look through your results a little later, you'll go across to the tab Conundrum, and it's CU-Nundrum, and that's indicating copper. So when we look at these levels, it's actually there are 12 indicators of copper dysregulation, and you've got 11 of the 12. We talked about that before. And then copper and iron, this is one place where it's not worth holding on to the numbers at all in particular. It's just if you have something that's higher than this level or lower than this, then it's a flag for us that behind the scenes there's iron and copper dysregulation. That's the main take home. So there's a lot of flags there for you. But again, that just tells us what we knew already based on your symptoms, that you haven't been feeling well and that you've been dealing with this for quite a while.
Yeah. Okay.
So now is when we come to the blood test results. And so we see your red blood cell mag as, when we convert it across, is 5.1. And that is at the bottom end of the range, so laboratories 40, 50 years ago used to use a range of 5 to 7 milligrams per deciliter. That's the unit that Morley uses. And yours is sitting at 5.1. Optimum, though, is 6.5. And so you're well below that. Often when we see someone that's got your hair analysis where it is and your health where it is, we would even see it lower than this. And so this was actually one of the flags for Teresa and I that you may have taken zinc, because sometimes it changes that dynamic.
Yeah, as I say, it was probably 6 months ago that I last had some.
Yep.
And I know I take a lot of, I think I've tried to take a lot of calcium. I've had, a lot of magnesium.
Yep.
And I know that I somehow need it, but I don't seem to be able to take enough of it without things like my feet really tingling and my feet and lower legs getting really sort of tingly and feeling very weird.
Yep. Yep. And again, as we get the permeability, so to speak, if we get it going in the cells better, then I think that will reduce. So we also see the plasma zinc is sitting at 82 once it's converted. The optimum level there is 100 or thereabouts. Again, that's actually not as low as we often see, but again, it's below optimum. What we see this happening for is because iron is like the bigger brother that always gets his way. It will bully in and go, okay, so I'm going to store myself in here, and zinc, you can get out of the way. Well, again, once we get the iron shifting, then that will come up further by itself without needing any supplementation.
Right.
So it was another flag that you had probably taken zinc, as is this next set of results. So with slow oxidizers, it's common for us to see that the serum copper might be a little bit above 100. Again, it's part of the coping mechanisms. It's not saying that you've got high copper. Often it's higher than 100 and it's low bioavailability, which we'll talk about again in a moment. But yours is actually 85, so it's less than that. So for a slow oxidizer, that's a bit unusual for us to see. But
is that good or what does that mean?
It just means that the zinc has pushed it down.
Oh, okay.
So what we are going to work on with you with the root cause protocol is bumping that back up to 100 and the other, or around 100. The other thing that we are looking for is ceruloplasmin. No doubt you've heard that talked about plenty. When that gets converted, your level is at 20 and we want it to be at 35.
Right.
So that commonly, so when we look at ceruloplasmin, there's two parts to it. There's what we call peroxidase, which is the antioxidant component. It's the one that helps move the copper around. It's the bioavailable copper, if you will.
Right.
But also within that ceruloplasmin measure is what we call an immunoreactive protein. And we can't tell how much of one or the other there is because, unfortunately, the laboratories, the commercial, day-to-day laboratories don't let us have access. Research labs do. But when we look at the whole picture and we know you're symptomatic with the asthma side of things, we see that your MAG is at only barely 5, just over 5, then we know that there's likely to be a lot of the immunoreactive protein and not very much of the peroxidase. So
it might be dominating.
Absolutely. And again, we don't know the actual numbers, but for sake of an example, it might be that you've got 50% peroxidase, 50% immunoreactive protein, or it could even be more to the immunoreactive protein. But what you need is for most of it to be the peroxidase and for a very small amount to be the immunoreactive. And as that tips, so you may find that you redo your blood tests in 3 or 6 months' time and your ceruloplasmin is sitting at 20 or 21 or even 19, it's somewhere around the same levels, but you're feeling a lot better, your asthma is probably a bit less, or you've got a bit more energy, or a few different things, and you may look at that and feel a bit defeated. That's not actually a bad thing at all, the results you're seeing. It's probably that you've got more of the peroxidase having kicked in.
Right.
So that's why it's so important to go off how you feel, not just what numbers tell you. It's the whole thing together.
Yeah. Okey-doke, got it. Yep, thank you.
So lower on the page, you've got some information about unusable and usable copper. Again, this is talking about that bioavailability. And so
which page are we talking about, Kristen?
This is under the blood analysis tab within the spreadsheet.
Oh, no, sorry. Have I got that screen?
You should do. Again, you may need to look at your computer later on.
Oh, okay. Will that be in the Zoom app, will it?
Okay. I have actually recorded this, so in case your phone dropped out or anything like that, so I can save a recording for you so that you can review this if you would like.
Oh, that would be excellent. Yeah,
Yep.
thank you. I think I need to, because I haven't got any of the screens except for the first 2 graphs.
Okay, sure. Yep. So again, when you look at your results, you'll see it. There's a line where it says unusable copper and one that says usable copper, and then some percentages. You're sitting at 29% unusable, and what we want is about 5. Again, that's optimum. Not everybody gets there by any means.
Yeah.
There's something to shoot for. But the flip side of that is you're sitting at just over 70% usable. So we want to get 95% usable. And this all
did you say 70, 70?
70.6 currently.
Okay. And we want it at what, 90, did you?
95.
95. Okay.
Again, shooting for optimum. Most people don't sit at exactly that, but that's the direction that you want to head.
Yeah, you want to go that way, yeah.
This is showing what we were telling you with regards to the lower bioavailable copper side of things. That's what we generally see.
Yeah.
Now, the next few results with the serum transferrin, serum iron, TIBC, iron binding capacity, and ferritin are all giving us an indication that you've got low bioavailable copper again, and that you've got some inflammation there. Have you donated blood? Are you able to donate blood?
I haven't. I've contemplated it since I've been following Morley's information, but prior to that, I was a bit reluctant to. First of all, wondering about, well, what's the quality of my blood for somebody else anyway? That was the main thing that was in my mind. But secondly, wondering whether it was actually going to be detrimental and sort of tip me into a worse state than I was already.
Yeah. So, Teresa, I'll welcome your feedback here. I don't know that right now is the best time, but I'm wondering in a few months' time when your adrenals are a bit stronger, that you'll benefit from it, because you'll start to mobilize the copper, you'll start to mobilize the iron and that sort of thing.
Although with the ferritin being 170, I wouldn't leave it too long.
Yep. So maybe
okay.
I would look at it and say in a couple months.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
But make sure you get onto the protocol, especially magnesium, do the adrenal cocktails, and you know, some liver happening, and things like that first, and then if you feel like you could, then I would donate, because the ferritin is high, so anything above 150, we'd like you to donate.
Right. Yeah, thank you. I've made a note of that. I'll definitely, as you say, I'll give it a bit of time. I'll implement the your recommendations, and all being well, I'll definitely take that step then.
Awesome.
Yep.
Perfect. So now what we do is we actually will run through what you are currently doing, and this is where I'd love feedback on, you've said MAG works well and that sort of thing. So I'm going to go through step by step, and then we'll find out where you're at and what we will suggest you do next. So are you presently doing any cod liver oil?
I take a teaspoon of cod liver oil at night.
Yep. Excellent. And then what MAG do you currently do?
At the moment, I've got Jigsaw Magnesium Malate, 100. I have had another form. I can get it out if you want it, but I'm not using it at the moment. But it's had a greater amount. But as I said, I was getting some tingling and so on in my feet, so I switched out of that and tried the Jigsaw slow release.
Oh, yeah.
Without B6, and separate then again on another time with the B6.
Yep.
I'm not sure that the B6 works very well with me, and I'm not even sure the slow release works very well with me. So in the last few weeks, I've just been sticking with the Jigsaw Magnesium Malate, plain and simple.
Oh, yes.
And the tingling and sort of feeling that I was getting in my feet and lower legs seems to be settling. I'm not sure what the issue was, whether it was a slow release issue or previously the B6. I don't know, but yeah, it's sort of settled. So I still don't think I'm getting enough magnesium into me, but I'm not really sure how else to do it without those other effects.
Okay. Yep. And so how much of the Mag Pure malate are you taking?
Yeah, so what I've been trying to do to try to get enough in is I'll take one, because the magnesium tends to make me a bit sleepy. So I take one in the early evening, so it's not going to affect me too much if I get a bit sort of tired.
Yep.
And then at bedtime I take another one.
Okay.
And I was trying to take one of the slow release in the first part of the day, but I just wondered whether I was feeling a bit sort of groggy and a bit vague through the day with taking magnesium earlier. I don't really know, Teresa, to be honest, but I stopped doing that anyway. It wasn't paying off for me.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And that, again, it's good that you listen to your body on that, because everything doesn't always suit everyone. So Teresa takes one type of malate, and that makes I respond generally very well to supplements. I don't react to too many, I've found, but the same brand that Teresa uses, I get aggressive and I get all sorts, and I'm a pretty passive person generally, so it was quite a big shift for me. Whereas,
yeah, well, you made me think of one supplement that I took, and I was this is earlier in the year, something that it was the ATP stuff, one of the formulations that I was telling Greg about.
Yep.
And honestly, I got so aggressive in myself. I mean, obviously not acting out in any way, but I just honestly could have screamed, kicked, punched on one particular day. I just had to stop it. I don't know what it was that provoked that.
Yeah,
I suspect very strongly it's something in a B formulation, because I've had something similar with previously a practitioner recommending. Oh, I know what it was. It was a B complex formulation, one that's been very well recommended around the traps, but it just really twisted me.
Yeah, I feel your pain there. I remember I was getting angry and really irritated by my kids, and they'd done nothing wrong, and I could consciously go, hang on, this response is not a normal response. You don't need to be doing this. But at the same time, I'm there, and I'm going, oh.
Yeah. Oh, I wouldn't have liked to have had young children when I was going through that around me. When I was going through that, it was awful. Yeah. But really, it was. It sort of was built. I could feel something building up over a couple of days. When I had that one day, and I just thought, oh, this is really not good. And so I just stopped it.
Yep.
And then it took me a day or two. So it was clear that it was connected to that supplement.
Yeah. Yeah. So how are you with the whole food vitamin C? Have you been able to introduce anything there?
Yeah. I've used the powdered one. Is it the Synergy or the Innate Response? One of them anyway. I've got both of the capsule one and the powder one, as recommended by the Facebook files.
Yep.
And that's fine. I do find when I make that formulation that I can only go so far, and then I get really loose bowels, a little bit explosive. I mean, I don't, except for the first couple of times while I was learning what I tolerated. It does not terrible, but I've just sort of wonder lately whether I need to work back within limits more, because I wondered whether I'm sort of eliminating minerals that I really need when I'm getting that effect.
Yeah, it can be. And now is probably as good a time as any. So within the calcium shell, what we find is that people may need calcium lactate. And again, you see, generally we say no calcium, but on occasions there are certain situations where calcium of this one type called calcium lactate, the body only has to do one thing to be able to use it. It's very bioavailable. It actually will help the calcium to go back where it should be, and it will actually help with the magnesium going where it should be and that sort of thing. And I've got a sneaking suspicion that with the introduction of that into your regime, that some of these tolerances for different things like the the peripheral neuropathy that you were having
Yeah.
with tingling and stuff, I suspect that may change, and the way that your body processes most of these things will potentially change.
Right. And so is there a particular brand of that you recommend, Teresa? Kristen?
Teresa, I think we've got one in the spreadsheet, don't we? Or if not, I'll include it in the
Yeah, there is.
You'll send me the information.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's. I've wondered about calcium, but I've been so not willing to go there after reading all of Morley's things. But I've just wondered, how that would fit in for me, because it seemed to have some relevance.
A good majority of people should never supplement with calcium and just get it from food. But in your situation, it
and I don't have dairy. Sorry?
And also, you got to be careful how much calcium lactate you have with magnesium. So basically, you want a ratio of 2 magnesium to 1 calcium.
Right.
So your current amount of mag, that's 100 milligrams of the calcium lactate for 200 milligrams of the malate, the way that you've been having it.
Okay, right. And as I have been dairy free now for probably 8 years, I've often wondered whether there was, even though the protein in dairy is problematic for me, whether there are other parts of the dairy food benefits that I'm missing.
The only one I would flag, it's not actually for calcium, it's for the retinol. So vitamin A from butter or ghee. That would be.
I use grass-fed organic butter every day.
Perfect.
And I cook with ghee.
Yep.
Yeah.
So keep that up.
Okay. No, that's all good.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now
excellent.
we'll quickly zip through these next little bits of the protocol, and then I'll let you go. But what I'll do is I'll keep recording a little bit more after you head off, so that you know some other suggestions and that sort of thing. So you can watch that after your meeting. It'll probably take me a couple of days to get it uploaded, but I will get it into a private area of YouTube and send you the link to it so that you can watch it.
Okay, so you'll send me the link for it.
Yeah.
All right then.
Yep.
That's fine.
So,
thank you.
Have you been able to tolerate having bee pollen at all?
I have been very reluctant to go to bee pollen, because I'm just so concerned about having any sort of allergic reaction. So, I mean, if you think that there's nothing in my history or what I've told you that would flag any real likelihood of that, I'm quite happy to try it. But I just thought I wouldn't go there until I've got some informed advice about it.
Have you ever reacted to a bee sting or anything?
No. I think I had a bee sting once, and of course I've eaten honey. That's not a problem.
Yeah, I would say that you're fine. I wouldn't flag any. You want to start slow though. So you literally, these little bee pollen, they come as like a little grain, and you just want to start with 1 per day, and that's it.
Okay.
And then build up from there. Put it under your tongue, let it dissolve under your tongue, and see how you go from there. You may notice no difference. You may notice that you do have a reaction. You may notice that you've got more energy. Each and every person reacts in such a different way. We can't ever predict it. Chances are you're fine, quite honestly.
Okey-doke.
Just start
That's
slow.
great. Yeah.
So I'm just typing that up while I...
The yeast, what is it? The what do they call it? Is it the nutritional yeast I see is in the protocol. Again, I know that that's not meant to be provoking candida, but I have a history of candida, and I haven't gone there yet. I mean, you can advise me whether that's... I have been taking 2 liver capsules a day.
Beautiful. So we would be getting you to increase that up to 6 gradually.
Okay. And is that liver capsules all the nutritional yeast? Are they interchangeable, or are they doing different things?
They do different things. I would choose the liver over the nutritional yeast. The nutritional yeast is a bit of an extra bonus. There's some great great goodies and nutrients in it, but beef liver gives you bioavailable copper and a whole lot more.
Okay.
Now, where are you at with regards to rice bran and diatomaceous earth? Have you started either of those?
I've had the diatomaceous earth. At the time I wasn't. And it was like 3 months ago. So I just didn't continue with that for some reason. I'm trying to remember at the moment why that was. And yeah, similarly the rice bran. Was it that did I come and read something about rice bran that made me think, I should hold off on that for a bit. I can't think what the issue was, but that's one or the other, isn't it?
It's actually both potentially, but some people will alternate them. So,
Okay.
For instance, people can find it hard to juggle in between the routine of everything else, and so might take one thing before bed, and that's all they can squeeze in. Well, you know what? One day, I would introduce one at a time to make sure that you do tolerate it okay. So over a week, just have a small amount. But you could find over time that you might have the rice bran one night before bed, and then the diatomaceous earth, or it might be on waking. It doesn't have to be before bed. It's just on an empty stomach.
Okay, and neither of them are likely. I have terrible time with getting to sleep. Neither of them are likely to keep me from sleeping.
No.
Okay, all right.
Quite the other. I find that I sleep better. I actually have slightly vivid dreams on the rice bran. So I would suspect, given that vitamin Bs in the past have been something that you've responded to quite a lot, just start slowly with the rice bran and have it in the morning rather than just before bed, personally. Again, you might find it's great before you go to bed, but it just depends on
and could you mention you had the ATP formula?
Yeah,
and
I did have
very high dose to be.
Okay.
That's probably why you're reacting to the bees, because you probably got too much.
Yeah, sure. What about DHEA? What about DHEA?
You get that naturally from memory from cod liver oil, or from body helps to manufacture it based on cod liver oil, so you don't need any additional.
Don't need to take.
No,
okay.
Not at all.
Good. Yep.
Magnesium oil on your stomach can give you DHEA as well.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Well, there you go. I'm learning along, because I do it every night before bed. And if I don't sleep anywhere near as well. So there you go.
Yeah, there you go. That's excellent.
You probably
I need to go, Kristen. I've got my I've got that other teleconference. I'm sorry.
That's okay. So I'll finish going through this with Teresa, and then we'll finish off the video, and I'll save it off for you, as I said, as soon as I can. But I've got really dodgy internet here, so it can take me. I've got a few to upload, so we'll just have to see how it's behaving.
No worries. Look, if I haven't got anything by Friday, I'll just touch base just to make sure that you haven't sent it and it's gone astray. That's all.
Absolutely. Sounds great.
All
Have a great afternoon, and thank you.
Thank you very much to both of you. I really appreciate it, and I've already learned plenty, and I've got some a little bit of increased optimism but hopefully realistic.
Yeah, I'm sure. What's the best thing you got out of today?
Oh gosh, I've got 6 pages of notes.
Excellent.
But look, it's probably the biggest thing is it's confirmed some of the leads that I've extracted from following the conversations on the magnesium Facebook group. And it's given me confidence to get into details of the protocol more. So probably those are the main things. And yeah, as I said, it really confirmed the issues around copper for me, copper and iron, I think, and the importance for me of getting on top of those.
Excellent. That's our goal.
Thank you very much, Kristen.
Have a great day.
I'll be in touch, I'm sure. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
No Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. I'm not sure if Anne is still there, but we'll keep talking anyway. So, we're not sure what you're doing for boron.
Yeah, she said she was doing that.
Yeah. So foot
I'd,
soaks, prunes, Amina's Daily Boost is another good way. We'll talk about that more on the other page anyhow. Taurine would be coming from the protein, and I think once the digestive proteins are added to digestive enzymes, sorry, that will probably help with that. Do you think any additional, Teresa?
I would probably not hold off if she hasn't started that one yet. She could do that later.
Yep, sounds good to me. Ancestral diet, well, we didn't get to check that, but it sounds like a lot of what's been eaten is very thought out and that sort of thing. So make sure you get plenty of good fats, which again was just said that you use butter and ghee and that sort of thing, so that's perfect. Proteins you've already mentioned, and veggies especially. So with iodine, you don't need to start any iodine supplements at all. You can get iodine from
Kelp.
Iodine from kelp and natural sources like wakame and dulse, which I think they're both types of kelp anyway, to be honest, but you can use that in cooking. So now we'll flick over to the protocol page, and what do you think as far as vitamin E? That could be a medium term thing, so we just get some of these other things settled in first and then go from there.
No, we could start from the top. Yes, you can try the wheat germ oil. That'll be really good. But yeah, just introduce slowly, like one at a time. With all the digestion, just make sure you just do one at a time so you know they're okay.
Absolutely, it's so important. Black cumin seed oil. That could be maybe a middle of the range, medium range type thing. It's another anti-inflammatory. It's a historic thing actually that's been used through the Middle East, Turkey, and that sort of thing for quite a long time. So it can be quite useful as an anti-inflammatory, but it, I think medium term, it's not priority right now. We want to get bioavailable copper into you, particularly at the moment. The diatomaceous earth that we were just talking about, again, we really want you to introduce one thing at a time. So I'm going to send a summary email with this, so have a look at that email. Diatomaceous earth is worth being in there, but I would be getting the whole food C and the magnesium and the adrenal cocktails as balanced as you can as a priority to fitting the diatomaceous earth in. Now, we didn't get to talk too much about digestive aids, but both in clearing the iron and in aiding digestion, apple cider vinegar, where you put about a tablespoon of the apple cider vinegar in some water and drink that before a meal. It does say you can add honey, so if you choose to, you absolutely could. I found just having it by itself, but then I like the flavour of vinegar. So each to their own, but that before a meal, especially protein meal, can help. Also, using fermented foods can assist with more effective digestion as well. And again, shifting of the iron. So the product that I use for digestive enzymes is Trienza. The one that Teresa uses is, instead of Digest Gold, it's the same brand, but Digest Basic. So you can choose either of these to trial with regards to digestive support. One or the other, you don't need both. Now, another way to get magnesium into you, maybe by using Amina's Daily Boost. I don't know if you've tried this before. It's a liquid mineral source, so ionic minerals. And so each 5 mils of this product has about just over 400 milligrams of magnesium. And what I've got a suspicion of is you'll be able to very gently introduce this and then let your body adjust in. And especially as you start to use the calcium lactate side of things, that it will help your body to utilize this more effectively. So I would be getting this. You can get it from health food stores or online. I would start slowly. So you might find 0.5 ml daily is enough. You might even find that you need to start on less. So my husband and I have a drink morning and night that has 2.5 mils. Otherwise, I don't mind actually adding the whole amount to a large water bottle and just drinking it through the day. But I quite like the taste now, whereas when I first started, I nearly gagged on it. So it does taste like salty water. Beware. Buyer beware. But I don't find it unpleasant at all now. And if you need to, you could put it in tea or in other drinks that you may already have. Just don't have it with the adrenal cocktail. Have it throughout the day. You can use it in cooking, anything like that. So you're already using the oral mag, so you're using the malate. You could look at introducing at some stage glycinate. So we use Doctor's Best from iHerb. And all of these products are going to be in the spreadsheet, which I will have linked you to by email. Again, I don't know how you'll tolerate it, whether it will go smoothly for you or not. I suggest that taking all of the introduction of mag in slowly might be worthwhile. And for instance, you might be able to gradually build the aminas up so that you have 5 mils every day. And then when you get to that 5 mils, you might be able to then pull back on that a little bit and introduce some glycinate. And then you might tolerate it without getting any of the other responses that you've had in the past. So it's a bit of give and take. I started with mag oil and put sprays of that on my body, and each week just went up by a tiny bit. I'd get to a certain point where I had it all over me. And so I would then cut that back, take a tablet, and then gradually build up the spray again. So that way I didn't get any upset belly or anything. You were right in your comments today that you didn't want to be losing nutrients by being over bowel tolerance. That's a great rule of thumb. In this process, you might find that you need to actually up it, get to that gut tolerance, then the next day reduce it just a little bit, sit there for a week or more, and then try and up it just a little bit again. And that's how you can see how you go and get it up to the optimum, which is 5 milligrams per pound or 10 per kilo of body weight. So we were just talking then about sprays. You could also try that. You might tolerate it really well. Another way that you could do it is through foot baths or having a full bath, either or. And this is a really great way to get the boron in as well. So, and mag-rich foods wherever you can is a great idea. Now the adrenal cocktail, unfortunately we didn't get to talk about that. It would be really good for you to look at the adrenal cocktail. In the document, which I'm going to have attached to the email, there's some links to other alternatives if you can't do the orange juice and that version. Just make sure that you keep, where you can, keep it away from food, and also where you can keep the ratios of the sodium to potassium up there. So if you reduce the amount of orange juice, then or don't use orange juice, then you need to increase the amount of potassium that you use. Whole food C, I'd be interested to know how much you've been able to tolerate of these. If you're not at 400 milligrams per day, it would be good to find a way to see if we can get you there. Again, I would be probably focusing on the calcium and the magnesium factor first, and then this will settle down. Do you have any other ideas there, Teresa, around that?
No, that sounds really good.
So 400 milligrams per day, which is 1 tablet of the innate. And you may find that you need to split up the innate so that you do half in the morning, half at night, and that you don't get any gut reaction from that. From memory, the Pure Radiance is 125 milligrams per a quarter of a teaspoon. So that might be 1 teaspoon of the Pure Radiance. But again, you may need to spread that out to have a quarter of a teaspoon 4 times through the day, and then you don't get any gut reaction. So just see how you go. Slowly introduce the bee pollen. So that might be 1 grain at a time initially, and then work up. The nutritional yeast, we've got a couple of brands there that you can get which are not fortified. All the rest have B vitamins in them. Again, right now, you may not need that. It might be better for you to just get it from the bee pollen and the desiccated beef liver and the bits of rice bran as you start to introduce it. It's really up to you. It's quite tasty to have on food. So just see how you go. It's not a high priority right now for the nutritional yeast. Then the stabilized rice bran, again, similar as with the diatomaceous earth. I would be looking at doing it soon after the you've got the vitamin C and mag and everything sort of stabilized, but not as a high priority. Beef liver, you're doing 2 per day now. Build to 6 per day. And that gets you to your 4 ounces per week equivalent by doing that. Taurine, so later. Cod liver oil, you said you're already doing a teaspoon. I'm not sure which one, so continue with that. And so those other things are not relevant right now. The one thing I will add here is
the calcium lactate.
So calcium lactate, you want to be doing, so if you're doing 200 milligrams of mag right now, of the elemental mag, you want 100 milligrams of the calcium lactate. And we'll have a link within the information to a brand that you can get from iHerb. So generally with the magnesium, you want to steadily so you might find at times that when you're in a increasing the mag step, like say you're using sprays or the aminas, that it's a bit hard to do exactly half with the calcium lactate, but just do the best that you can. It'll be fine to approximate, but always go under rather than over with it, I think would be the general. So if you are getting to 250 milligrams of mag, well, it's a bit hard to do 125 of the calcium lactate. So just roll with the 100, and then when you get up to a point where you can do 50 milligram or whatever the easier increment is to do, because you've gone up enough with mag, then do that. So that covers the supplementation side of what we would suggest investigating for you. And obviously you're going to have questions, so have a look, have a read, send us an email if you need to, and we'll go from there. So thank you for today, and we'll talk to you soon.